So today we're joined by Cathal Friel, Managing Director of Raglan Capital, which is a very short title to describe a very long and successful career. But Cathal, you've been described as a serial deal maker, an entrepreneur, an operator, a creator. And I was going to start with a lengthy bio, but then I thought maybe I'll leave that to you. So say you're at a party full of people who don't know anything about your world or about what you do, and it comes around to asking what you do. So what do you say Cathal Friel does?
And thank you very much for having me. Yeah, and that's probably a tricky question. My kids regularly ask me that, and people say, well, I have to think about it. Probably, look, the easy way of putting it is that for the last 10 or 15 years, I would put companies together, hire a really good CEO and CFO, and try and list them reasonably rapidly on the London Stock Exchange. So we've done that now successfully for about 15 years. We've had 5 IPOs. But to do that, you really have to be both an entrepreneur, which is usual, but listing companies sequentially, you actually have to be really a finance person or a kind of stockbroker. There's so much, let's say, detailed financial data. So I originally was a finance person for 20 years. In one of my careers, I've had like yourself and lots of it. The whole world has lots of careers. I think the modern world, we're all having multi-careers, multi-changes at the ideas. So yeah, to do that, I would have primarily a finance background. And the key to setting up these vehicles for anybody thinking about doing it, anybody can set up a company. The tricky bit is raising the money. If you can raise money, you can do anything. So fortunately, I'd spent 15 years in corporate finance and stockbroking, primarily selling family-owned business, entrepreneurs' businesses. And that gave me a pool of people when you get close to when you sell the business. They tend to trust you. And if you're then, and the big thing, anytime an entrepreneur sells his business, he or she would love to go again or invest in other people's business. So our target audience is usually dealing extensively with existing entrepreneurs. And this is target audience and target initial investor list. So they would back our projects. We usually try and find distressed companies, put them together, fix them, and IPO them. And with that sweet spot in London, 10, 20, 25, maximum 30 million new funds. And that can be dollars or sterling at IPO. Does that kind of summarize what we're doing?
It does. It would be, I think if I were at a party and you told me all that, I'd be I'd be a little overwhelmed.
I make it up as I go along.
So your journey into business had a remarkable start. You were just 16. For folks who maybe don't know that story, tell us a little bit about that, what it was like and kind of how that fuse lit your path.
Well, I'd say that most entrepreneurs around the world, they generally don't set out to be an entrepreneur. There's a reason. Sometimes redundancy, sometimes termination of employment, sometimes change of environment. There's always some impetus to make you run your own business because it's not a normal. The normal thing is go get a job and go with the flow. So my stumbling into entrepreneurship would have been 1981. Family had a business in Donegal, far northwest of Ireland, quite rural. I call it the Outer Hebrides of Ireland, or my kids call it Shrekland, the land from far, far away. Donegal. All my neighbours will kill me for saying that, but it is quite a distance. Long story short, father of the business, he overexpanded 79, 80, and there was quite a spike in interest rates in 81, and he got bad health, and they owed the bank a lot of money. So basically, I was a 16-year-old, just finished which was then known as the Irish Intercert, which means is for American, that would be high school, halfway through high school. And I saw this bank manager parking his car. The windows you could see. I said, well, what's he doing there? Because I knew him from being around the house. And he came in. And the irony of irony, and for years they kept saying, my God, I don't believe I did that. But he said, basically, you've got to come home. If you don't get involved in the family business, we'll take the family home and house. So basically, long story short, a 16-year-old left school quite suddenly to deal with debts. As being around the world, happens every day of the week. There's a kid in the wrong place, the wrong time. I had 5 older brothers, 3 younger brothers and sisters, 3 younger siblings. I was just the wrong place. The rest were university. The other ones were too young. So it worked. It was the impetus. I hated it. I spent 10 years trying to get rid of assets, trying to sort the business out. Went back to college at night because I hated it. I used to love school. Went back and did, first of all, a City and Guilds diploma in computer program, just random. and then got on a mature student degree in the University of Ulster. Even though I wasn't quite mature, kind of at that time, I kind of fudged my age, being honest. I wasn't quite the 25-year-old I might have claimed to have been. And then that got me onto an MBA program. So that got my qualifications. And eventually I got rid of it, sold the family business. So that took me up until 97. And I took off and went backpacking for a year around the world. And just prior to that, when I finished the MBA, I did spend 5 years lecturing part-time at the University of Ulster. A lot of the MBA students, they invite them back to if they want to work part-time. And I was one of those. So I ran the family business daytime, lectured at part-time at the University of Ulster in international marketing and business policy.
And when you say you hated it, Cathal, do you mean you hated that you had to leave school, that you hated running the business? What did you not like about it?
All of the former, all of that. It was just, I was a 16, 17-year-old. The family had been quite academic. Everybody was automatically expected to go to university and go through university. And it was, and like you try anywhere in the world, it was a rural business in a small village. It was a Ford franchise, filling station, grocery store. I had an Irish cottage, rent an Irish cottage business. It was a complicated enough business. And yeah, it was messy and tricky, and the business was not in good shape. And then losing all my school friends, it was a big impetus, because I remember within 3 months, Christmas, I'd left school, I went back and there was the Christmas Debs, or it was a kind of disco, and really looking forward. It rocked up, and remember the one of the teachers says, "Sorry, no, can't come in. You're a former pupil." I remember going home, crying my eyes out. There were so many sweethearts I was looking forward to meeting up, and that made me suddenly become an adult, because then and it was actually a great thing, training in life, because suddenly I hadn't thought it through. I thought, yeah, come Christmas, I can go and catch up with all my friends at school at that disco. So that was part of the hate piece. It toughened you, builds your resilience. Learning to study at night was a great one for a future. So basically, took my year off, came back, and then again decided, would I go to Belfast? Would I go to Dublin? Getting out of Donegal.
So this is sort of 10 years on now, we're talking kind of roughly.
Yeah, this would have been 10, 12 years on, 81. And this would have been, eventually I sold the business in 95 and ran a small business in Belfast, Euro Technology, a small computer software business. But I always wanted to take a year off, because I felt university, I'd never taken more, all the years, a week or 10 days when you run the business. That was holidays. Whereas my siblings would have taken 3 months off every summer, and someone went backpacking. So eventually, as a slightly older 32-year-old, I think, 33-year-old, in Easter 97, I took off backpacking, went to Africa, typical backpack, around Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, and back home. I came back home Good Friday 98, which was ironic. That was the Good Friday Agreement time. And tossed a coin, do I go to Belfast? I was getting out of Donegal. I had no interest in going back to Donegal. It was fine, but it wasn't for me. And it was either Belfast or Dublin. And really luckily, I just decided, yeah, I'll come to Dublin. And I remember knowing nobody in Dublin, and had some family members there, but no business connections. And it sent out about 50 CVs, and went to nearly all, because of this unusual CV. People interview me, but didn't know where to package it or where to put me. And eventually, after 50th rejection, I said, well, hang on a minute. Came to this interview with a guy called Jim Marr, an all finances software company. And I did have my regional city and guilds diploma from all those years earlier in the regional college up in Letterkenny. I did it at night. And he again couldn't pigeonhole me. So I said, I'll tell you, Jim, I'll work for 3 months for free. And he said, oh, that got my attention. So I worked for 3 months. And after 3 months, then he gave me a proper role. And within a year, he made me deputy CEO of the company. And myself and Jim and the team built it up to quite a successful software company. So that finally got me on the road to, let's say, working life of a proper job, I would call it.
So we'll pause there. What did you learn from traveling? I mean, you had a lifetime of work almost behind you at that stage, even though you're still very young. What did traveling teach you?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, and I should bring it up more often to people. My friends in Ireland who knew me before I left viewed there was a different Cathal Friel came home, radically different. Because when I was in Ireland before I went traveling, I was relatively shy, not introverted, but would never have been the party animal. Never have, when you go into a room full of strangers, I wouldn't have been the most comfortable person. However, the beauty of backpacking, it taught me, and particularly going on my own, I hesitated for a year to go. And eventually I went on Easter Monday, 97. And I said, right, I'll go on my own. But going on your own around the world was actually fabulous because it forced me, every time we went to a backpacker's place in the evening, they were really cheap and cheerful, most of them dorms with bunks. Basically, there'd be strangers, everybody would be strangers, and you actually had to put your hand out, say hi or say hello. And for the first few weeks, that was always difficult. But then after each week and month, suddenly discovered these were also very shy people. And literally after a year of doing that, I came home, and that helped me fantastically later in my career and business. If I go into a room full of strangers, I just love it. Glass of wine, Mohammed, go in and put my hand out, meet a lot of people. And it's actually trying to teach people and entrepreneurs, if you go into a room, a meeting, a conference, a seminar, don't hang around. I call it Billy No Mates in the corner, because there's a sort of 2 or 3 minutes. It's a bit like battlefields. You look around, you scope out the targets and say, right, sometimes you go for an easy target. There's 2 or 3 people loose and they don't seem to know each other. And you just dive right. And the most important thing is put your hand out and you offer to shake. Because if you just say hello, people go, oh, who are you? But you put your hand out, you get that engagement. And that's what I did during the backpacking. You shake hands, hello, and then you say, who are you? And then suddenly the conversation kicks off. So yeah, that was a totally different Cathal Friel. I'm always quite amused that even for the last 3 weeks, for the first time in my life, I've taken 3 solid weeks holidays together in Donegal. And with I have youngish kids, 13, 15, and 17. I bring them up to where I did grieve. You know, I said I hated working. I love going back there now on holidays. And even meeting some friends that I kept in touch with from 40 years ago. They keep saying, come around for dinner. I say, wow, God, you're so more engaging and talkative than the quiet guy we used to share houses with in Letterkenny in the 1980s. So yeah, the learnings, cut it off, the learnings would be to meet strangers. And anytime I go into a room, anywhere, conferences, JP Morgan, I go there every year, you go into any of those drink sessions in the evening. And I have a rule in all our companies. If we go to a conference, anybody goes to a work conference and they don't bring their business card, they're in big trouble, because a bit like putting your hand out, offer your business card and they'll automatically offer one back. And that's how you get people's contacts. I do find it's quite amusing post-pandemic, going to so many conferences, and the younger generation say, oh, we don't use business cards, it's bad for the environment. And what do you use? Oh, just LinkedIn. And they don't realize is that LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft, and you're basically, you don't have the contacts. It's very hard coming home from a conference. Oh, who did I meet? Whereas traditionally, go back to your conference, you have your bundle of business cards. You jog your memory who to follow up. So yeah, so that's, I learned how to meet strangers, and you realize strangers are lovely, engaging people. They're like you, they want to talk. Some strangers don't want to talk, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was invaluable, really. So now you're back in Dublin and you're running this company.
The
So
software, yeah.
this software company. So what happens next?
I still was keen to do something more entrepreneurial because it was actually going well. So I was teaming up with a guy called Sean Melly, who had a reasonably big mobile exit in late 90s, 98, 99. And self and Sean tried to put us together a small venture capital company called Paris Court. And that would have been 2000, 2001. And then the dot-com crash happened, so we didn't get it off the ground. However, at the same time, a bunch of NCB stockbrokers had left and set up Marion stockbrokers. And one of them I knew, associate John Conroy, and he said, Carl, you kind of good guy, you know, software. I was positioning myself then as a software person. Would you come and join us and give us a hand to do some deals? So I came into Marion. And again, this is about careers, chance in your arm, literally. I'd never been through the door of a stockbroker in my life before. And in June 2001, joined them. Almost 20 years to the day that I had left school to run the family business, and really got stuck in. And again, remember the first couple of weeks, we'd be advising clients and I'd be actually whispering to a colleague, what are we doing now? What are we doing here? And it was mainly trade sales. So I loved that. Marion we specialized in TMT in Marion, technology, media, communications. And we built a small group, built up a great franchise on doing trade sales and doing fundraising. So that took me from 2001, 2007. And with Marion was fabulous fun. It was like running our own business, setting up as Planet. And in 2007, I decided it was time to set up my own business. And that was Raglan Capital, the one over my shoulder. And that's the vehicle I've been using ever since.
Great. So you've a long history by now, really, in the pharma and healthcare space, Cathal.
Yeah.
Starting with Amrit Pharma, biopharma company, you floated in 2016, I believe, and recently you stepped down as chairman of HVivo, which is a clinical trials company that you helped take public. And now you're continuing with Poolbeg Pharma, which we'll get to in a minute. But what made you take that leap into healthcare and pharma specifically initially? Was that a personal driver or just simply an opportunity that happened to be in healthcare?
Yeah, maybe to get there was an intervening step that'll tell you better what. Doing corporate finance, I specialized in Marion and in Raglan, from Raglan 2007 to 2011, doing trade sales. That was as good as selling companies, mainly family companies, from about 20 million to 200 million. Not the huge ones, not the tiny ones. And we sublet an office in Raglan in 2009 to a person called Michael Nolan, who became a very good friend, and John Craven. And they were always involved in oil and gas, doing small oil and gas deals. And we gave them a small office and got, in lieu of rent, we got some shares. And they did a reverse takeover of a small SPAC, you call it in London, called Lapsplatz. It had a market cap of $250,000, a share price of 1 penny. And they took control of that, changed its name to Cove Energy, and discovered gas in Mozambique. And it took off. It went in 33 months from 1 penny to £2.76. In the London stock, it went from $250,000 market cap to $1.7 billion. It was sold for to Shell or PTT in Thailand. So that was going on, and I was still an advisor helping them as one of those. So they then said, Cathal, look, you've been a great advisor. You've been helping us. Unfortunately, you had no shares. How about we set you up? Enough of this corporate finance business. It was 2011. They were in the middle of their own sale. We'd set up a new vehicle. It's called Fasted Oil and Gas. And oil and gas was taking off like a rocket, if you remember, 2010 and 11. We set Fasted up along with them. I became the executive chairman and the largest shareholder. I'm called Raglan Cash In. And this is how it became the pharma. And if you look, oil went from $40, $50 to literally $127 a barrel in about 18 months. So in 2012, oil and gas was up there. So, and that was perfect time for small cap. Fasted was a small cap explorer. Small companies find the oil, the big companies buy them out and develop the fields and sell it. So small oil and gas companies are the explorers. They're good at finding things. And this is where the analogy comes to biotech and big pharma. But they don't have the skills to take the oil out of the ground or sell it. That's big oil. So basically the plan always small oil, you find it and you sell it. But with oil, then suddenly late 2012, early 2013, oil crashed the whole way from $127 to $25. It's impossible for a small oil and gas company to survive with oil and gas. It was down there. So I said, what looks like oil, smells like oil, behaves like oil? What industry? And pharma. Small biotech are the discoverers. They discover the molecule, they develop the drugs, they take all the risks. And big pharma are brilliant at manufacturing, sales, and marketing. And the same as well, Texo, Exxon, BP. There's about 10, 15 monster oil companies control oil and gas. And what have you? You have 10 or 15 or 20 monster pharma companies control the pharma industry. So they're very similar. I found a great guy who was out of a job, Joe Wiley, he ran the Sofanova Dublin office. I said, Joe, come and give me a hand. You know biotech. And self and Joe scouted around. We went to Germany, discovered a distressed asset, put it into Amrit Pharma, which then we used to take over Fasted. And that within 18 months, we IPO'd it in London, using the Fasted vehicle. Basically, it was a reverse takeover. And within another 2 years, 2019, we'd IPO'd it in NASDAQ. At that point, then I stepped back and let Joe and Rory, the CFO, basically run Amrit, because I felt there was a brilliant CEO, there was a brilliant CFO. That's all you need to run any company. And I thought, wow, how about I do it again? So I let Joe and Rory go and do their things. And they did it fantastic. They took Amrit, when we IPO'd, it was 20 million. And they took it right up. But Casey bought it in 2022, I think it was. 2017 was IPO, 2022 for 1.4 billion in cash. It was a fabulous. No, the share price didn't go like that because there was a bunch of acquisitions along the way. So instead of hanging around getting in the way of Joe and Rory, they'd be very strong-willed, independent individuals, and you can't, too many cooks in the kitchen spoils the broth, they say. So I thought, I'll get out of the way. And I thought, well, could I do one more that I'd have more involvement? And we set up Open Orphan, which was basically a completely startup. It went off to look again for distress, because Fast had acquired distressed assets, Hammer acquired distressed assets. And the big learning for any entrepreneur, there's two ways to start a company: grow it slowly, the hard, build a product. But go around, there's a quicker way. Find a company, somebody has done all that hard work and it has run into distress. So everything we do, we look for distress. And Open Orphan, we found two distressed companies. One was Venn Life Science, a small clinical trial company in Dublin, Paris, and Amsterdam, quite small, in complete distress. And we absorbed that. And HV, we'll talk about the lucky break in life. In November 2019, we agreed to take over HVivo in London. It originally had a market cap of 300 million, had collapsed down to 7 million by then. The only thing it did really well was it tested vaccines. And for the previous 10 years, there was absolutely no interest in vaccine development and testing. And it was in such bad shape. So I personally loaned the money for the wages in January 2020 and February 2020. But I think if you think of January 2020, that's when we took formal control of it. And it was absolutely, it was busted, it was bankrupt. However, the pandemic, just testing vaccines, took off like a rocket. And HVivo went from a 7 million market cap, peaked to about 400 million market cap at peak pandemic. But it came to a point early last year, we got stage, had a brilliant CEO in there, kind of Mo Khan, a brilliant CFO. So again, even Mo gave an interview recently about what it was Cathal like to work with HVivo. He said he's great mentor, he trained me, he taught me to do everything, but he gets bored very quickly. That's why I left. So I sold, and we've an investor. It's very important. Small cap companies can be quite successful. You're looking for a very rapid growth, but also they can collapse. So my view to all our investors is that at that stage, Open Orphan, which we renamed HVivo, it's the same company, just changed the name, had gone from 3p to 30p. I thought, well, hang on, 10x is a pretty good turn. So I would have sold half my shares quite publicly in February last year. You can't tell people when to buy or sell because it's public. And then I sold the balance in July. So that was a kind of hint around 30p. Well, if the founder is selling, might be a good time to sell. So that I came out of that. We set up a new co called Poolbeg, and again, distressed assets.
It seems like to the layman that those are very kind of high risk, potentially high reward kind of industries that you're attracted to, like oil and gas, pharma, right? We all know trials maybe don't go the way you want them to, or something kind of some geopolitical thing happens and oil can go up or down, right? And I know now you're kind of getting into the rare earth minerals as well. But before we started talk about that and kind of your appetite for risk and reward, tell us a little bit more about Poolbeg Pharma and kind of what it's doing.
Yeah, look, Poolbeg Pharma had some assets. HVivo would have raised too much money in 10, 12 years ago, raised 150 million for the sake of raising it, and they didn't know what to try to develop biotech assets. But weirdly, within the clinical trials company, which didn't make sense, there was a very large investor in London called Neil Woodford Capital, and he was investing money, throwing hundreds of millions. He'd got 6 billion to spend, and he actually basically blew most of the 6 billion. HVivo got 150 million of his cash. So it had this cash, and it started developing assets. But one of the main customers of HVivo would be big pharma, the likes of Pfizer, GSK, Janssen, and you can't really be developing biotech assets and you're trying to service your customers. So our view would they need to be spun out. So we spun those assets out in the Poolbeg. It had one key asset which we really liked, was a P38 MAP kinase inhibitor. And that was a drug that had been around for quite a while, this kind of wonder drug that kind of underwhelmed. And we have two brilliant scientists, people, Liam Tremble is one of them. And then my mentor is Brendan Buckley, and he's a brilliant scientist as well. He would have been the chief medical officer at ICON. And Brendan and Liam came up with the idea, take the P38. It was originally developed within HVivo to deal with the CRS response. That's a cytokine response syndrome, or during COVID, we all knew about the cytokine storm. And they were trying to develop that product for severe influenza, because your CRS response goes through the roof. But Lehman Brenton came up with a better idea. Oncology treatments, the new CAR Ts, new bispecifics, I call it new wonder treatments, that are basically late stage hematological blood cancers where there's almost no cure and is very serious and you're beyond response. The bispecific and CAR Ts are having an amazing 50% almost people immediately cured. However, of the other 50%, there's a very serious CRS response because the CAR T infusion or the bispecific infusion, your body just naturally reacts very violently with a CRS. So the guys came up with an idea and got IP around it that you could suppress the CRS without damaging the therapeutic effect. And there's actually statistical, there's research out to say that reducing the CRS could technically improve the therapeutic effect. So that's basically our lead product. It's entering a trial this summer. It's a 2A. It's an investigator-led trial. And it's basically to test that in real cancer oncology patients. We did a number of pre-trials, 1B, which was a challenge study. But this is the real McCoy. So this is the big year for Poolbeg. If we can prove in a real cancer treatment, a bispecific that is going to be, that we can give our pill. It's literally a small molecule. This is a P38. It can be in an orange, can be given in a granulated form in a drink. But if it's taken a week and each day before you get your bispecific, our study tells us, and our trial is proving, we're not trying to cure cancer. We're starting to stop that 50% of people who have a really bad adverse reaction. That will be transformational Poolbeg. The reason it will be is that there's tons of CAR T, there's tons of bispecific, there's tons of trispecific coming through. The limiting factor when you're getting any of them, you must go to a specialist cancer care center for 2 to 3 weeks. You're kept in, your family have to move home to be near you. You are very late stage cancer. These are wonder drugs, but it's very inconvenient being locked away for 3-4 weeks in a strange environment. And the only reason you're there is half the patients do, and more, some of them have a very negative reaction to the treatment. However, our treatment we're trying to prove, and it's really exciting, if the P38 works for us, and we have lots of IP around it, it means instead of going to a specialist cancer center to take your bispecific or trispecific or CAR T, you can go to your community, your GP practice, because you take our pill 001 for a week of treatment. There's no CRS. There's no need to monitor you. And bear in mind, the monitoring is quite a few CAR T patients, quite a few bispecific, end up having to go into the intensive care. That's why it's in these. So it has potential to transform oncology treatment, taking it away from the rate limit. And the limit is there's only a limited number of beds in these specialist cancer treatment centers. And suddenly we can make bispecifics and trispecifics available to the mass audience.
And how confident are you? I know that's hard to maybe assess, but how confident are you in these trials?
Yeah, and look with all drug trials, I say toss a coin. That's like all. However, in this case, the drug has been around. Again, back to the stressed assets. It was a drug that went through a lot of trials for rheumatoid arthritis and had fabulous efficacy, except it had liver tox issues because for rheumatoid arthritis, you'd have to take it for all your life. Whereas for CRS, you only take it for a week. So we've done, and again, hVIVO does challenge studies, which we challenge the immune system. We've done a 1B challenge study, which literally, as the scientists say, it gives us everything under the graph you could have even dreamed for. So we'd be very optimistic. We think we will be able to prove in a bispecific trial later this year and early next year, those cancer patients will have no adverse reaction, and it will reduce the requirement for the cancer patients to go to a specialist cancer center. Your local GP, your district nurse can even come and give you the infusion at home if there's no concern about the adverse reaction.
How high of a tolerance do you feel you have, Cathal, for risk?
Good question. Somebody many, many years ago, when I bought shares all my life, said, you like risk, but you don't like crazy risk. So I always like downside protection. So I'll only risk what I can afford to lose. And that would have gone back to the family business. My dad risked everything. and virtually lost everything, including his health, and almost lost his family. So I don't think anybody ever should take wild risks. I always think take a percentage of whatever you have when it comes to risk. And you must look, I think most entrepreneurs like that. Very few entrepreneurs are gamblers. There's a difference between gambling is literally tossing a coin. And that's, I'm not saying clinical trials is gambling, but there is, at least if a clinical trial fails, you can go again and do something else. But gambling means if it fails, it's dead. So I think to answer your question, no, I've a relatively high tolerance for risk, but not gambling risk. Like there's always a limited downside. There's always something to recover from, let's say, the investment.
You know, a lot of the folks probably listening to this come from a world of precision and slow evidence-based decision making. Your world seems to move a lot faster. You know, what do you think you can learn from both?
Yeah, I think, and what I could learn from both, or what I can learn from, let's say, precision and, let's say, medical professionals, what they could learn from me and vice versa, is I think there's always a combination. No one way is the right way. I tend to try and move things fast, create the company in 2, 3, 4 years and be out with year 5. That's because we buy companies that somebody's done loads of hard work. Like that P38 that we now have in Poolbeg, we've only had it for 2 or 3 years. And we would hope in 18 months maybe to be bought, sold, or done a big partnership deal. But there was 15 years done by other people struggling it. So I think we could learn. I think everybody should look at a road where you're going. And is there any faster roads? Do you take the motorway? Do you take the B roads? Do you take the side roads? And when you're trying to get somewhere, it's nice to take the motorway. But sometimes it's nice to take the scenic road. So I think to develop drugs, and I'm very happy to tell you, I have a very strong view in recent years of how the American healthcare system is broken, how the British healthcare system is fundamentally broken, but the future of healthcare is the Irish healthcare system. Let me come back to you in a few minutes, okay? And I think it's when you think it through, I'll tell you, oh, it makes some sense. But when it comes to clinical trials, they're long, they're plodding, they take time. But there's a reason, like the original FDA was set up in, I think it was in the late 50s, because it was a mercury-based product, and there was no testing, and there was a GP somewhere in Kentucky came up with this fabulous idea for a drug. I think it's something to do with mercury or something. And when you took it, it was fine and cured it, but it was drug adverse. But if you happen to be taking another drug at the same time, it almost killed you right away. So that's where drug adverse reaction. And unfortunately, I think what will probably utterly transform clinical trials will be AI. Like AI is a bit like, and this is not to be flippant about it, but America and Russia never used to have to test their nuclear bombs by letting one off deep underground or out in the Pacific atolls and making a bit of a mess. In the last 20, 30 years, the big countries don't do nuclear testing anymore. They have very, very high-powered technology, that computer systems that can test without making the bang. The same goes with drugs. The whole thing is billions of combination permutations, and what's good at that? ChatGPT, or just not Chat AI. So I think you will see, and the regulators around the world will start speeding up, and that will be one of the things that it's combinations, is testing those things. So I think, yeah, drug development, but at the moment it's way too slow. It's almost like, not to say that there is a change in the world. We've had 30 years. There's a fantastic book called Abundance that was published last year. And it looked at why is the red states in America, they don't have a housing problem, they don't have homeless problems, and why the democratic states have hugely expensive housing. And the book, when it looked around the world, it said, we've got too cultural red tape, regulations, bureaucracy. And the whole ethos of the book is, why is property in Florida and Texas 1/5 of the same property, or 1/10 the price that is in Boston, New York, in California? And it just says that you're allowed to build almost at will in some of those red states. So same with drug development. The FDA, yes, there's almost an abundance of caution. And I think if you think around the world, I think under the previous couple of American administrations, it was a bureaucracy of red tape. So I'm not a fan of the current administration in any shape or form. Other than the one thing I'm a fan of, they're trying to get rid of red tape. Likewise, in the EU is trying to get rid of red tape. So I think what's happened around the world, too many people got jobs as civil servants, as regulators. It was a nice job. And then if you're a regulator or a civil servant, you're paid to create rules, laws, regulations. So I think for the next 20 years, the world is going to start stripping back regulations, the world. And there'll be technology to preempt some of this thing. Let's say the risk, well, run an analysis in an AI system. There it is. So,
But Cathal, don't you think like the regulations, particularly around pharma, there isn't always that great. There's a lot of history, I'm sure, around certain drugs, had side effects that had big implications for people, and do you not think those regulations are there for a while? I think a lot of people would argue that pharma is not there necessarily for the benefit purely of people. It's there to make money, right?
it has become extremely long and it has become extremely expensive everywhere in the world to develop drugs. There's a lot of good drugs out there. So my belief is we are entering an era of deregulation. It's almost like we're going through the 1920s and 1930s, deregulation. So I actually think AI has the potential. If you think the idea of the FDA, absolutely, the drug regulators around the world is there to save us from bad combinations, the law of unintended consequences, the kids, what do you call the certain drugs had side effects for the next generation. But I think with AI, it's not there yet, and we're not even close, but within the next years, there will be an area to speed up some of, you think that the idea of having to do the phase 1, then the phase 2, then the phase 3 in big mass studies. Look, my view is hVIVO in London does human challenge studies, and hVIVO, now there's only certain drugs you can put into a human challenge, but for human challenge clinical trial, you can get the same efficacy. You can actually infect 100% of your participants in a human challenge study. So you can get 200 infected volunteers to see, does the vaccine work or not? Does the antiviral work or not? To get that same number in a field study, you have to go out to 10,000 to get the same. So that's where there is ways of improving. And I think AI will be one of them, because you'll go into the cell molecular level, predict a bit like testing a nuclear bomb. It doesn't have to go bang anymore. So the same with a drug, a lot of it will be done in silico. You'll be able to predict a lot. And then my belief, it'll be concertina. You have to do phase 1, absolutely. Safety studies, but I think you'll find phase 2, phase 3 merging into one. That basically will be a huge amount of post. And bear in mind that the whole thing is, it's post-authorization, the traditional phase 4. So I think you'll have almost phase 2 and 3 merged into one, and a lot more post-authorization, because everything is so digital. We'll have our phones, we have everything else. The minute you take the drug, you can get early warning so quick. Whereas traditionally, you had to be very careful. If a drug went wrong, it could be weeks or months before you hear of the adverse reaction. And I think with phones, you can shut a drug down really fast. Recall. So I actually think they do need to speed it up. And look what's going on in China. China definitely are speeding up biotechnology. There's a huge amount of biotechnology drugs coming out of China at the moment. Big pharma licensing them post-pandemic, because they realize, let's be honest, I think they are speeding up the development. We're not really sure how they're doing it, but they're producing these drugs that now Western pharma are very happy to license. So I think there's room, as they say in this school, for, I think, and this is me, a non-pharma person, but I've run 2 clinical trials company. I've now my second biotech. The first one was pretty successful. Touch wood, Poolbeg will be. So I genuinely think technology has to come into play.
If we had some physicians listening who might have an idea or an innovation, but they don't know where to start as an entrepreneur or an investor, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, look, and I'm all about trying people to start business. I say, there's 2 points in your life you can start a business, okay? This is for anybody. Before you partner off and settle down, i.e. before the kids appear, or post. And for some people, they don't do the kids. And the reason I say that is that through our 20s and early 30s, most people, a bad income is not as important But then as soon as kids come and mortgages appear, that's a difficult period. So that's why you don't see as many 38 to 48-year-olds starting business. The sweet spot is younger people, and they're more than in their 20s and early 30s, and then pause. And the next period is post-kids, people in their 50s, early. And the reason I say to start a business, you have to have a little pot of cash. If you have no pot of cash, you're goosed. And that's why people something got bounced into it because they're made redundant or some circumstances change. But anybody thinking of starting a business, the most important thing, we've all got mortgages, we've all got car loans, but you do need this little pot of cash that if things go wrong, you can keep the mortgage payments, you can keep the car payments, you can pay the kids to go to school. So you do need that little bit of a rainy day fund. Most people have it. And then basically what they need to do very, very quickly. The world is awash of money. Find the investors who'll back you and pay yourself a salary. It's absolute nonsense to do an entrepreneur thing. It's what I did in previous lives a long time ago. To work for free. There's enough money around in the world that anybody entrepreneur starting a business gets some basic investment that'll pay you to keep going. The rainy day fund there is just in case it all goes wrong and the money runs out. There's that window of 3 or 6 months till you can find a new job. So, but I think the most important thing is the Obama saying, yes, you can do it. You can do it. Anybody can start a business. So I think anybody thinking. And the other one is, this is what most people, the two jobs, the side hustle. Keep the day job, particularly if a physician in the hospital or anything else or any medic. 90% of entrepreneurs have 2 jobs. I have 3 jobs most of the time. I run Raglan Capital, which is our financial services company. I'm executive chairman, which is usually hands-on, have been for the last 5 years at clinical trials company HVivo. I'm executive chairman of Poolbeg, and good measure I'm executive chairman. And you can multitask. That's probably what I learned by having to study at night and work during the daytime. So entrepreneurs, they should think about, or anybody thinking about doing a side hustle. Keep the day job, maybe reduce it to 3 or 4 days a week. And this is the beauty of post-pandemic, working 3 or 4 days a week is the norm. But maybe I'd say never give up the day job fully until the other one takes off. It's that kind of crossover. One of them starts off as the side hustle, an idea, the entrepreneurial seed, get it going. And the day job might be 4 or 5 days a week. And the side hustle is the evenings and maybe bits of Saturday and Sunday. And as a crossover, suddenly the entrepreneurial seed, then it's raised money. And you're doing that 3 or 4 days a week. And you're working 2 days a week in your previous career. And the other thing I'd say, don't be afraid of failure. Every entrepreneur, give it a go. Don't give it a go for too long. 18 months to 36 months. If it's not working, go back to the job again, regroup, take it easy, lick the wounds and go again. But never give up. Never give up.
Maybe it's a good segue to, you were going to tell us what was wrong with the healthcare system and how to change it.
Yeah. And again, I'm talking out of order because this is I'm a finance person, an entrepreneur, a clinical trials person, biotech. But anyway, my feeling is, and it was at the original AIM Summit in Dublin 2 years ago, I ended up being on a panel sitting beside Jerome Adams, the USA's former Surgeon General. And it was quite funny. I came in late and he was sitting down and he'd me a little nudge and sat down late and he says, "Who are you?" And I said, "Who am I?" And then I was starting to think, penny didn't drop. I gave him a little nudge. "Who are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm Jerome Adams." I said, "Oh shit, you're the star speaker here." Oops. But we got quite good friends after that. But his talk revolved around then. And that's what got me thinking that he had an article in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times 6 months earlier. He'd been out biking in the mountains. He got dehydrated. He went to an American hospital. I'm not sure which one, but not the name, but whatever it was. And he went in and get rehydrated. He got a bag of rehydration and something else. And he was home in 3 hours. And he got a bill for $10,000. And he said, "It was ridiculous." He said he went online and he checked. You could buy what he was given for, I think it was $25. So he was making the emphasis that's how broken the American healthcare system is. So that piled in at the same time. It's quite ironic. My pitch at AIM Summit was the future. I think it hadn't planned. I didn't know what he was going to speak about. But the future of the world, particularly American healthcare, is the Irish healthcare system. For anybody listening in Ireland, they think I'm nuts. It's everybody's healthcare is problematic. So the reason I think it's the future is First of all, look at something that's fundamentally broken is the UK NHS. It's 100% state funded. Less than 10% of people have private healthcare insurance, and it's just creaking, it's falling apart, and everybody admits it doesn't work. So 100% state funded doesn't work. Look in the US, almost 100%, not quite, but massively privately funded. The issue is taking stats and using the old ChatGPT earlier. The average, say, 4-person family, 2 adults, 2 kids premium before the employer reimbursed it for private healthcare insurance at the moment is $25,000 per year. And that's before you have to add in the co-pays and the other contributions. If you add them in, it goes up to $34,000 a year with a 2-child, 2 adults family. Good old ChatGPT, the same healthcare insurance in Ireland is 10%. It's $3,500 per year. And why is the difference? The difference is in Ireland is you have 50% of the population have private healthcare insurance, and there's 4 or 5 insurance providers. But where the government, and I think it's where the magic has worked, first of all, we're a small country, 5.5 million, but it copied the British system because it was part of Britain up to 1921. It copied a lot of things. It has the national healthcare or the health-based government funded, and it built a lot of proper hospitals, university hospitals. But about 25 years ago, the government then brought in private healthcare insurance and allowed businesses to build private hospital. So the big teacher training or the big doctor training hospital, university hospitals, the Mater, St. Vincent's, James's, and the rest of them were allowed to build a private hospital on the same grounds. So the public was one part of the grounds, and the smaller was to one side. There was a private. So anybody with a healthcare insurance could go into the private. And the magic of it, the doctors worked both. The same consultant worked in the public practice, and he could moonlight in the private practice. So that has meant healthcare in Ireland. It works. We're paying on average $3,500 a year in the healthcare premiums. There is relatively quick. If I want any form of elective surgery, I can get it done on average within a month. It's not months and months. If I use my private healthcare, the system is creaking a little bit. Yeah, you wait longer, but not abnormally.
It's sustainable for Ireland, Cathal. I mean, it's relatively recent, right? The private hospitals, and are we maybe creating a 2-tier healthcare system, and how do you keep the standards and the timelines down and the motivation, I suppose, for physicians, even if you're getting paid more in the private system? Don't you think that story has not really fully played out yet for Ireland?
Yeah, I use the word carefully, commingling. And I think Ireland's a small country. Another country is doing it very similar. It's Singapore. Okay, both of them only 5.5 million. But I think the way to look at the other way is that look at the other extremes. Germany and France have a fantastic healthcare system, probably the best in the world, but it's massively expensive. It's virtually entirely state funded. But the percentages there of GDP, where Germany is up to 13% of GDP in healthcare costs. France is 12.5%, Ireland is 6.5%. But that's a huge part. America, as you probably know, is touching up near 20%. Like that's so much. So I think, unfortunately, and this again, I think there'll always be two-tier health systems in the future around the world, because it's a bit like, and it's a terrible thing to say, there is 2-tier transport systems. For people who want to go low cost, you take the tube, the subway, the buses, the trains. That's one form of transport. And there's a second tier, private transport, your own car, taxis, whatever else. So I think healthcare is no different to public transport. There has to be two tiers, 2 sections. The government has to fund. There always has to be a fallback. And this is again back to all the crises in North American healthcare, is that the government doesn't spend enough on the lower paid, and on the safety net is not quite there. That is in Europe, is in Ireland. So they need a safety net. But I think they've got to fix the system. Is endemically expensive.
I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. Well, maybe not totally. Still, I suppose, in the vein of health and well-being. What do you do kind of to maintain your own health and well-being?
Well, everybody in the office told me they've never seen me looking so healthy and well the last on Monday, and you'll think I'm mad. I
There you
spent the
go.
last in Donegal. I spent 3 weeks. I'm just texting my wife earlier. I had probably the best 3 weeks of my life. I have young kids. I take them up. She goes off to spend time with her mum. She doesn't like she calls I do the daddy summer camp. But yeah, what I do, I think young kids keep me young. They stay with me. We rent a big old cottage up on a beach in a little fishing village. My sister rents one down the road, and we have loads of other kids, like a bit like other families. There's a mammy free zone. Other dads come with their kids, and we bring them out with a small speedboat. We bring them out 4 at a time on a banana board. We bring them water skiing. All go all day, bring them fishing before that, and then bring them in, and we've dinner every night. Myself and sister cook for 15, sometimes up to 19. So normally I come back, I should be exhausted. But actually, believe it or not, I feel bones and sore joints because I'm in wetsuits all day. But no, I come back completely energized. Normally it's been 2 weeks. This year I've just extended it 3 weeks because I've turned 60. So that's why I just think having young kids keeps me alive, keeps me young, keeps me fresh. And outside of basically it's work, it's the kids, but it's actually having great fun with them. If you look at the face of a child when they catch the first fish, or the face of other kids with pulling 2 or 3 mackerel off a mackerel line, it's just you're looking into another world. The face of a kid is just, and yeah. So to answer your question, that's what keeps me alive.
Yeah, you've mentioned too, I think, Cathal, about walking on Dunleary Pier and that you do that in the mornings. Is that kind of
Yeah, I think that's and very important for all entrepreneurs or anybody in any business, a surgeon, a pharmacist, anything, is just having me time. And for 15, 20 years, even before podcasts and before even I had all the Sony Walkman, I go off early in the morning, and just that the window in the day, it's about an hour, it's my time. As you traditionally used to be music before the podcast comes, now it's podcasts or audiobooks. And I go down there at 6 every morning. Yeah, just a nice fast walk down the pier and back. It's lovely. I'm very lucky I'm near the sea. So, but even when I travel, anytime I'm in New York, I go and do a fast walk around Central Park. Doesn't matter where I go, try and find a park and just go.
And do you always do it in the morning?
Yeah, never do it in the evening. I think we're all too tired in the evening. There's too many things. The morning is the one time you can pick it. I used to do it at 5:30 or 5:15, and all my neighbors used to call me Dracula. Do you ever sleep? But now I'm taking it easy. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I go out. But the reason, if you pick the morning, you can pick a time that the rest of the world won't interfere with you. You actually, 6 to 7, my life's nice, perfect time. Come back and help get the kids ready for school, and then we'll come back.
Yeah. I think you've said in the past, Cathal, that people can often overcomplicate things. What's something you've simplified, say, in your life that's made a difference?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Maybe I'd say I simplify when you go back to risk. I don't worry usually. I don't. I always say let my wife do the worry. It sounds terrible, but I just know my mum many years ago used to tell me worrying is such a futile exercise. You can't do anything about it. So the time for that is usually we worry at 3 or 4 in the morning. So all my life I have a little notepad beside the bed, or now I have a note, a diary note, and something's bugging you. So instead of worrying about, I'll turn on the light, I'll take a note to do it the next day, or more important, I'll just type it into my phone. And then once you've done something, you say, right, do this, do that tomorrow. The worry just diminishes. So I actually think we all go to bed. We all worry about something. But if you write down in a notepad or on your phone, do something about it the next day, suddenly you can sleep better.
Yeah. Before we get to our rapid fire round, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about investing and culture. And I've heard you talk about the lack of IPOs in Ireland and, that sort of path to investment. And the culture in Ireland is not to sort of invest. I know our pensions are probably invested in the stock market, but the culture, I suppose, among people in general is not to necessarily invest, which is sort of different to the US, where it very much is. So, what are your thoughts around that, or why do you think so few Irish people invest in the stock market compared to the US? Is that a cultural thing, a trust thing, a lack of exposure?
Yeah, I think that, look, again, we can beat up the US. However, they're the world leader in teaching people to invest. Your 401k, everybody's forced to look after that. And the 401k is designed to invest in shares. What's happened in Ireland, like there wasn't really money in Ireland. Like, that Ireland was an agricultural economy up to 79, 80, and was struggling through the 80s. People just didn't have that spare cash. There just wasn't disposable income. And in the 90s, they fell in love with property. So I think it is changing. The 401k is really about investing in shares. There's two types of shares. The IBMs, the Pfizers, the Exxons, they're never going to half in price. They're never going to double too quickly. But as Warren Buffett says, you add them every year and you took them away. And that's what most 401ks. So big company shares, I try and teach my kids, put a little bit in every month and kind of forget about it. Look at them twice a year. Exxon shares, Pfizer, yeah, they've gone up 5% or down 5%. You don't have to worry. But then to spice up your portfolio, you should have small cap. Small cap, for instance, we just say that in open orphan, most people need 10x of money in open orphan. And most people need 7x. They got 700%. 10x, 1,000%. We're trying to encourage people to look at Poolbeg. If Poolbeg works, it'll be a 10x. But you have to be really careful with those 10x because that is gambling. Because that is, and I said earlier, avoid gambling. So you put your money away, and Irish people are not good at getting a 401k. You keep putting big stocks and forgetting about them. Big stocks, year in and year out, might have a bad year, but on average, over 15 years, they grow better than any other investment asset. Small stocks, you have to watch them. And if you get 2 or 3x, sell. Never be afraid to take profit. I tell everybody on any of our stocks, every time the share price doubles, take some money off the table. Take some money off the table in case it collapses somewhere. So in Ireland, the issue has been, there's been obsession with property because people through the 80s could never afford property. People in the 70s couldn't get property. And then property became available. So I think for people in Ireland, look at the American 401k system. People buy shares. And I think if people want to put money away for the future, they really have to start. And the government in Ireland, again, the auto enrollments of pensions are encouraging people. So, yeah, the auto enrollment pensions forces people to consider about saving. There's a whole group of people in Ireland have absolutely no savings and think they can live off the government pension. But that's going to be cruel in a few years to come. They'll realize, oh, the government pension is only 250 quid a week. That doesn't pay that much.
Do you worry about a crash, Cathal, or do you leave that to the wife as well?
No, actually, I actually think the world's awash with money at the moment. The crash of 2007, luckily, I hated debt. I had no debt because I just hate debt because I had to go live school over. 2007, the Lehman's crash, the great financial crisis, was known all over the world. There was too much debt in the world. The debt was, everybody was borrowing. Debt around the world. Crashes only happen when there's not enough cash. I don't think there'll be much of a crash. Stock markets always have wobbles. And anything that it's lockstep. You grow, you have sideways movement, you solidify, you grow, sideways movement. So those speed wobbles and stuff. So no, I don't see any big crash coming.
Even though it's at kind of really unprecedented historic highs.
Yeah, well, the thing is that people sell shares. The reason stock markets collapsed 2007, 2001, 89, the different crises was that people were borrowing money to buy shares. The original 1929, people were borrowing money. Post the Lehman's crash, we call it, it's got harder to borrow money. Banks have become more sensible. So, like, big crashes happen because people have to sell money to pay margin calls. There's not. So, no, I actually think if you look at the best example is household debt all around the world. It is an all-time low, household debt all around the world because people have just realized paid out in the mortgages. So, I don't see a big crash. There'll always be speed wobbles.
All right, rapid fire, Cathal. So we know all about your successes. Give us a failure.
Failure, I've been plenty of them. Like I start businesses regularly. Okay, good example. 3 weeks ago before I went on holidays, I put $150,000 into, I don't know, say a crypto coin that had gone up 5x in London, and today it's down 95% within 6 weeks. So the quickest, if my wife even knew now it's part of our portfolio. I was the best. So yeah, I hate crypto. Going on holidays, this thing had gone up 5x. So yeah, the things like that. I'd have started a bunch of businesses that we never brought investors in, and you just use your own money, and then there's only when there's legs. So yeah, there's been a whole bunch of those that didn't really go anywhere. And Fast, I've done 5 IPOs. The first IPO didn't do as well. People had to hold and wait till it converted to Emirates.
Right. What's one thing you believe about business or life that most people might disagree with?
I believe if in doubt, just give it a go. Give it a go. A lot of people might hesitate. And yeah, this goes back to the caution. I don't jump off the cliff. But yeah, a lot of times if I want to try something, I just try it, set up a new company, try it, hire a couple of people, raise a bit of money. But a lot of people say, oh no, you should hang around and work on a business plan for 6 to 12 months and do everything. So yeah, so I actually probably starting business, I just literally might start it, see what happens, give it a go for 6, 8, 10 weeks. Whereas most maybe rational, sensible people say if you're starting a new business, you just take your time and think about it for 2 or 3 or 4 months.
So fail fast.
Yeah, fail fast and fail often.
What values from your early years have stuck with you the most?
Absolutely, be really careful with debt. It has to be paid back, or it'll come to haunt you. So that would be one, and that was it. The other one I think is be kind and be friendly. It's a real thing. There's not enough kind, friendly people in the world. But the degree of being kind and friendly, it comes back in spades. My kids give out to me, even when I'm in London with them. I speak to everybody, I say a lot, and they say, stop nodding to people, even in Dublin. I nod. I say, smile is the one thing you can give to anybody. And they can't turn it away. They might frown back at you. So yeah, so what the learning is be careful of that, be friendly, be helpful. But really important, in my one overriding thing in life, and it's a kind of Bible, do unto others as you expect to be done to yourself. So I think when it comes to making people redundant, everybody needs to be made redundant to feel how sore we're letting them go. And it's a bit like too many men in the world have never been dumped. And I think I was dumped one time, very, and it's still the present day. So like, it's hurt. Don't hurt other people. Look at just for years. So I think do unto others as you want them to do unto you. I know it sounds biblical, but a lot of these biblical things are there, they're moral compass.
What are you reading or listening to right now?
Say just finished Abundance. It was a brilliant one. And terrible. For the 3 weeks, I haven't done any Audible, but I have to try and find one on AI. So I'll tell you what one I'm doing at the moment. The Empire of AI. That's my list. I started before I went on holidays, halfway through it. So, and the next one is lined up is Sam Altman's one, The Optimist. I'm trying to get my head around AI. So I'm basically listening to lots of audiobooks about AI, about the Sam Altmans of the world. There's loads of them, because I think it's going to have perverse changes on society, on our life. I don't think it's a big over. Everybody's thinking, I think AI is here to stay. It's going to create more jobs. It's going to get rid of a lot of jobs, but it's going to create far more jobs than people ever imagined. I think it's going to transform drug discovery. It's going to transform all sorts of discoveries. But I do think people have to be careful. I think the big thing about AI is the thing to worry about is that you will lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI. AI won't take your job. So I think that we should not worry about AI. It's here. It's a bit like, wait, no, let's deal with it. So all I'm doing is trying to understand it. And then there's a way I can use it.
What does success look like to you now versus when you started?
Happiness, probably. And that's most people should always be striving and have a goal, want to be somewhere, but never arrive. The joys in life is the happiest part of life is the travel. It's a bit like the best days is going on holidays and coming back home. So it's the journey in between. So yeah, so success to me is actually having 3 healthy, well kids, like having little flowers, trying to grow them and steer them in life. And having a business with a bunch of really, really enjoyable, lovely colleagues. And having that little bit of flexibility now that I can take a few days off here, a few days off there. And after this interview, I think, probably just have an early evening, even though it's only in Dublin, it's only 4 o'clock. Normally I don't leave. So yeah, success is, and it's freedom, but it's not this lump of money. I've never been saying I need X millions. I think when people have arrived, like a great example, there's loads of programs around the world. People who win the lottery are 90% of the time regret it. I had a grandfather on my mother's side win the Irish sweepstakes in the 70s. And he became an alcoholic and he died. And mum said, I wish she never won it. And I did loads of research. 90% of the lottery winners around the world, 10 years later, says the worst thing ever happened to them. Because just money. And again, this goes back to entrepreneurs. I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs. My kids, I made it very clear to them, they're getting a very limited. The rest will go to the long-term trust for education and for philanthropy. But you imagine what you or I, if we were given 5 million quid in their 20s or 30s, it would destroy our life. So I think kids for next generation, and it does cause a problem for entrepreneurs. They make this huge sum of money and then, oh, I'm just going to destroy my 4 kids. Nobody wants to destroy their kids. So I think most entrepreneurs will educate their kids, will make sure they have a house, make sure they pay for a wedding. But Warren Buffett and Bill Gates says, always give your kids enough money so they can do anything, but never give them enough so they can do nothing. Yeah, so I think so that success is enjoying the journey.
Final thoughts, Cathal. You've clearly done it all. You've built, sold, reinvested, done it again. What's on your list and what drives you now?
Well, first, I wouldn't say I haven't done it all. I've got lucky with a couple of companies I was involved in. So definitely have done. Yeah, I just want to keep doing more of these companies. And AI definitely is going to be in one of the future companies, whether it's this year or next year or whatever. I genuinely love to see our 13, 15, 17 grow up to be happy. That's a huge part of it. I've just spent a month with them together. So yeah, and just continuing doing more of the same. Probably get involved in more. I'm quite involved with DCU, University in Dublin, and helping them involved in the entrepreneurship program. I find it very rewarding. So yeah, doing some of that and just enjoying life basically. Yeah.
Terrific. Cathal, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And best of luck with all of your future ventures. And thank you for being kind with your time to us and friendly to Ames. We really appreciate it.